Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
You just found the best place for your weekly dose of Star Wars therapy, Aggressive Negotiations. I am one of your hosts, Jedi Master John Mills, and joining me on this fun excursion out to the Outer Rim is my dear friend, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, welcome aboard. Are you ready for this week's journey?
Oh, I'm so ready. I think we have such a fun show for everyone tonight. So I would say buckle up and lock and load. Make sure you've supplied yourself with the best drinks from Lando's Falcon Bar, because you're not going to want to miss this one.
No, you are not going to want to miss this one, so you made the right choice. And you can make an even better choice by going over, if you haven't yet, to Apple Podcasts, giving us a star rating and review. We love to get them. We love to read them on the air. Find us on Twitter at The Jedi Masters. Find the network at Join Nerd Party, and then find the Nerd Party over on Facebook and Instagram, and drop us a line at thenerdparty.com/contact. Look up Aggressive Negotiations. We love to get your notes, and they often inform shows that we do. So, as you can tell, I'm excited. Matt, this is your topic today, but I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. I'm going to throw it to you here. We were talking about topics we haven't really covered in Star Wars, because we really do. That's a hallmark of the show, is we like to explore things that other people don't really go to. And you had a great question about professions, and I want to give you the opportunity to ask that question, to throw this topic out there.
Yeah, I don't know what it was. Maybe I probably just because I was just sitting at work today, and I was thinking to myself of like, what are the things in Star Wars as a job that I would not want to do? Like, what is the Star Wars profession I wouldn't want? And
now,
and so I started running with it. Like, you know, what are things I wouldn't want to do? And, you know, one of the things that I wouldn't want to do is, I was thinking about, you know how that, and we don't really know if it's like an acolyte or a priest or whatever, but he walks into Vader's, you know, chamber there on Mustafar to tell him that Krennic's there. I don't want to be that dude. You know, like, what kind of mood is Vader going to be in when I walk into that room where he's in the chamber? You know, he's as vulnerable as it's ever going to get for him. I just don't want to be that guy.
You know, I don't blame you for not wanting to be that guy. I will point out, though, that guy was pretty old. So I'm thinking he might have had that job for a while, meaning he knew how to keep his wits about him. So I want to ask one thing. You know, I'm big about setting up my parameters for things, and that job seems to go outside those parameters. But I want to make sure, are we taking out the easy gets here? Like, obviously, nobody wants to be an Imperial commander in Vader's fleet, right? Nobody wants to be a stormtrooper on Endor. Those sorts of things. We're taking those off of the table, I think, because those are too easy. But I like your pick. I like your pick, the poor acolytes on Mustafar, because first and foremost, that guy's wearing a heavy robe. We see no real evidence of good air conditioning on Mustafar.
No,
in fact, things seem quite hot in there. So I got to imagine hydration is especially a challenge there. You know, even Krennic has broken a sweat when he's there in Mustafar. And I really do think that probably that guy, like, I mean, it would at least, maybe it's like the Weight Watchers of the Star Wars galaxy, right? Like, you're going to keep no water weight at all when you're on Mustafar. In robes like that.
It's true.
That's just
it's
crazy.
True.
So,
yeah.
I mean,
or,
maybe they list that as a
maybe
benefit.
it has the universe's most incredible air conditioning, and we just don't know it.
You know, that would be such a boss move, though, wouldn't it? To, like, now I want to see something where Vader is overseeing the construction of his castle, but he's in, like, this nice, perfect chamber with like a nice window on it, and he actually takes his helmet off, and he's, like, sitting there, and you see him.
He's basically in the space truck with a clipboard and RC Cola, you know?
Right. No, but, you know, and he's sitting there. He's like, oh, this is too cold. This is a little cold for me. He's like, you know, and meanwhile, all the stormtroopers are out there in full armor, like clearing stuff. And everybody knows they're not going to say anything. You know, even though the boss is
don't
sitting
say
there.
anything.
You know, no. And wow, can you imagine the power necessary to run air conditioning on Mustafar?
Oh,
So I guess,
can you imagine the guy who has to come fix it because it's out? I mean, you would really hope Vader's not home at that point. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's an extremely, probably though. Yeah, I'm sitting here, and the thing is, when you ask this question, a profession you wouldn't want in the Star Wars galaxy, of course, obviously, you want to go funny with it, but I'm trying to put some serious thought behind it. And I would say, in all honesty, a job I would not want would be, based on what we've seen on screen, I would not want to be a planetary governor. Specifically because everybody on the planet is going to hate you. Everybody in the Imperial bureaucracy is just waiting to kill you if you don't get promoted. And your own troops probably want to shoot you in the back when you're walking down the hall. And everybody you work, like, it's the ultimate toxic environment, right? So I would not, under any circumstances, want to be a planetary governor. Regional governor, maybe. You seem to have a little more leeway, but again, Vader can still walk in and choke you to death if he wants to. But yeah, no, I mean, think about it. The governor of Lothal, he's, things don't go well for him. And it's one of those things where it's, so yeah, planetary governor, that's something I wouldn't want to be.
As the joke goes, there on the parodies that we get, especially from Robot Chicken, I honestly wouldn't want to be the janitor on any of the Death Stars. Can you imagine how long it takes to clean all of the bathrooms' toilets on the Death Star? I mean, just an insane amount of work.
That's a good point, but here's what I'm thinking. How many jobs are actually done by humans at that level? Or aliens? When I say human, I mean sentient beings. And how many of them are done by droids? So would there be a human janitor on any of these things, or would they all be droid-based? And it actually makes me think of another job I wouldn't want is, obviously the stormtroopers have those undersuits. Somebody has to clean those outfits. I would not want to be in charge. I wouldn't want to be like a quartermaster in the Stormtrooper Corps. That's going to be terrible.
Yeah, maybe the one good thing we came away with The Last Jedi, you did see like the laundry service. Like, who wants to be in the laundry service in any of the fleets, right? Like, that's just that's exactly why you joined up, right? Because you're really good at getting stains out of the Admiral's uniform.
Oh, well, I mean, the thing is, then you got the additional thing of like the body odor problem. Like a bunch of troopers come back from an excursion and they're like, okay, you got to clean our armor and stuff like that. Like, it's got to just smell awful. Mm-hmm. It's got to.
And, they were on like, Nal Hutta Prime or something, Nal Hutta. No, that's not where you want to be.
You mentioned Hutts. I immediately go to, I would not want to be a Hutts major domo. That seems like a thankless job.
Oh, yeah. No, that would be terrible. I think you're absolutely right. That would not be a job. And mainly just because you'd get yelled at a lot and your life would always be threatened. And so, like, no, who would want that job?
Although I will point out that Bib Fortuna must have been the greatest major domo of all time, because he manages to stick with Jabba for, what's it work out to, like 25 years or something like that? It's actually Boba Fett that winds up killing him.
We just saw him in Bad Batch, and he was there, making sure he got Mochi. So,
yeah. So I mean, that's he's obviously pretty good at his job. So maybe, like, can you imagine? Did Bib Fortuna ever write a book for, like, because like people have successful businesses or they're successful executives, and they always come out with these books where it's advice for people in the field and stuff like that. Do you think that Bib Fortuna ever had a book My Life with Jabba, How to Survive in a Challenging Work Environment. And there's like a bestseller out there, because I imagine if he's a major domo and we have all of these huts, that's definitely like a profession that people get into. And if so, is there like a certification process, right? Like a project manager can become a PMP.
Yeah.
Is there like a
He's got like
major,
his own. Yeah. He's got his own like cert program there at running on Tatooine. That's his side hustle.
Do you think that they also have like an internship program for it? Right? Like you can intern as a hut major domo, and just so that like Bib Fortuna can take a vacation, and maybe he's like Smithers with Mr. Burns, and he just always makes sure the inept one gets chosen so that he looks that much better when he comes back.
See, this is
of course,
smart.
the inept one got fed to the Rancor, of course. So.
Yeah, which reminds me, I wouldn't want to be a Rancor keeper.
Oh, no.
For, somebody who thinks they're all that, whether it's a hut or, anything like I don't want to keep, exotic animals for anyone. I don't want to be that keeper. That's not me. I'm not going to be crying over the fact that a Rancor died, so.
I mean,
it was Moochie, so now I do cry when he dies. So
you've met my dog. My dog can be a little wild, but affectionate, very affectionate.
Yeah, I've got the scar to prove it. Literally.
Oh, quit your whining!
It's on my arm. It's still there.
It's a love scar. So she's a true story. Everybody, she's sort of like Lenny from Of Mice and Men. She just doesn't know her own strength, and I could see forming some sort of a bond with a wild animal, all of those sorts of things. But the horrors that Rancor keeper has seen and cleaned up after, I would think over time there would be absolutely nothing left inside of you, because the Rancor eats people.
Yes.
And the Rancor obviously has a digestive tract, judging by the fact that there are bones laying around. So can you imagine, like, did the Rancor have a litter box that he had to clean? That had to be especially challenging.
See, yeah, oh my gosh, just the whole thought process. Now, you know what else I thought of? You know what else I wouldn't want to be? Is the polisher on Camino. Because everything is sparkling there. Can you imagine how long it would take to polish the insides? And then you have clone troopers traipsing in all sorts of dirt and muck and mire, and then you got to clean that up. Like, can you just imagine what it would take to keep that place as spotless as it is? Did they like clone a specific type of creature that, saliva allows them to keep that place that shiny?
I'm on board with finding out. I'm on board with that story, honestly, because I think the only other option possible is that there was some Kaminoan that the prime minister just hated him. Somebody who's, cloning tech went wrong or something like that. It's like, oh, guess what? You're on cleaning detail. Oh, man, come on. That's really interesting. I hadn't considered that, actually, about the Tipica City and the Kaminoans. But that makes sense. There's got to be a cleaning crew at work there. Mm-hmm. Although you could argue, of course, they can clone however many workers that they need.
Right.
But that's a whole ethical problem that suddenly becomes really serious. But
it's not an army. They're just janitors.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Well, it would really. The thing is, I go a little crazy there then, because I'm like, well, the Kaminoans would probably be really easy for them to like cast movies and stuff like that, because they could just clone whatever cast they needed and they could just have them, it's like, hey, they probably made like the best movies on the HoloNet and stuff like that. So
it's very true.
But, if I go just a little more serious, I would actually say that probably a job that I would hate, in all honesty, would be, and this would explain why there would be a robot at Dex's Diner. How much would you hate being waitstaff at a restaurant in the Star Wars galaxy with the myriad pallets? Right?
It'd be terrible. And like nothing ever good happens in those places. Like somebody's always dying or getting killed, or it's awful. It's awful. So,
right. But imagine we hear so many horror stories from waitstaff now on Earth. Can you imagine all of the different species coming in and the different tipping standards?
like
It's got to be just impossible to make a living. I mean, it's tough enough for waitstaff here to make a living. It's got to be impossible to make a living out there. So
I think you got a point. I think you got well, and it also kind of reminds me of, I would say, I mean, I guess of all places we've seen, Dex's Diner looked like a decent place to work. So
if I'm completely honest, Dex reminded me of people I've worked with. Big, a little smelly, very affectionate, and knew a lot about the world.
Yep.
And so
yeah.
Dex was a very authentic type of character. But that actually makes me think, how difficult would it be to be a tailor in the Star Wars galaxy?
No,
right?
I think that's a good point.
What skill set would you need for that? What if a Hutt comes in and wants a tuxedo?
Yes, absolutely. It's so funny because the whole idea of like working in the Star Wars galaxy, most of the time we don't really see people that have quote unquote like jobs, right? Our characters tend to be characters whose jobs are much more adventurous and crazy and outlandish, but they just kind of run into the guys. I mean, the last thing I would want to be is a junk dealer on Tatooine. That sounds awful.
Well, I guess it explains why Watto was so cranky. But
absolutely.
But the thing is, then you have Amy Sedaris' character on Mando.
True.
Right? Spaceport. How many people blast out of spaceports without paying? How many ships show up that argue about how much it's going to cost to fix things? So I guess that's sort of like of the same sort of mind as a junk dealer.
Yeah.
But what I think would be really interesting to sort of explore, and they don't really pull this thread too much in Star Wars Beyond Episode 1, but the whole slavery angle. You have obviously a system, and it survives through the Imperial days, and we have to assume that it's still there in the New Republic and everything. There are so many jobs that can be done by droids that you would wind up with a system where I know people love to talk about, stuff like, basic universal basic income and stuff like that. But how would you keep the Star Wars galaxy running without people working? Because there is, there's pride in your work. At least the people that we encounter. Watto's a jerk, yes. But again, going back to Amy Sedaris' character, she's good at what she does. She can fix ships. She can do these sorts of things that you would think that the pit droids can't do, even though they're built for it. They still need somebody to tell them what to do and how to do it, and haggle over price and stuff like that. So I think it's just a really interesting conundrum because, like you said, we don't see too many people with quote unquote everyday jobs. But I mean, there's bartender too. We've seen plenty of bartenders. And isn't that funny that in this future where there's all of this technology, we still see the need. And yes, I know Star Wars is a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago, all of that stuff, but still, futuristic sort of thing. They've hit their version of the future, at least. There's still a need for bartenders, even though contrast that, say, for instance, with Star Trek, where you just punch a couple of buttons and get everything you want precisely the way that you want it without any concern at all for anything. Whereas at least with Star Wars, we have seen people in some sorts of thankless jobs. People that, do you think Wuher chose, he grew up dreaming of being a bartender, and it's like, no, this is just how he's going to make his living. This is how he's going to survive. You make a really good point because I hadn't really thought about that idea of,
people that are, good at their jobs and seem to not really have an issue, with their job and seem to do it well. I was thinking of, we saw in The Mandalorian, and we saw Cobb Vanth, taking on this idea of, being the marshal of this town, or Cara Dune taking on being the marshal, and so, yeah, you do get these people who are, much more comfortable with the idea of being in a job and doing a job. And yeah, I mean, I gotta say, though, I wouldn't want to be, honestly, a lab worker for the Empire in any way, because they always seem to end up dead. I think especially of like Rogue One, all those guys who helped create the Death Star.
Yeah.
Just get mowed down. So that seems like a terrible job.
It does. But it also, I think, raises an interesting question as well, in that, are we seeing a reflection of that 1950s approach to scientists? Because I was listening to somebody being interviewed who works in the sciences, and he talked about how ethical questions are ignored by scientists because they just can't resist the urge to do the experiment or develop the technology. And you look at those scientists who were responsible on the Death Star project, and number one, why didn't they not do it? I know it's easy to say from a place of comfort, we'll just take the bullet and just tell them, no, I'm not going to do it for you. And we already know that, Jyn Erso's dad was pressured into it as a way to quasi-protect her. But what I think is interesting is that once the Death Star is completed, the first one, we have a situation where they're willing to throw away the lives of those people who worked on it because they were underway with a second one, but obviously there were different iterations. So I think it's interesting that there are scientists willing to do those things, because again, this is the sort of thing that you would think, based on the promises that are being made by the big tech Silicon Valley people today, our mindset is that, well, the machines will do all of that stuff. They'll develop the things on their own. We'll teach them how to develop those sorts of things. So there's still at least a perception that people will need to do those jobs.
Yeah, I mean, I really like, the whole idea of what you had brought up, with the scientists, and, brings to mind Jurassic Park. Your scientists were so preoccupied if they could, they didn't stop to think if they should,
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we see there. And what we saw in Rogue One, isn't that what happened, to Galen Erso? He got so caught up in this idea, he didn't think about the implications of maybe how you could use this. And so I thought it was really, really interesting. And so, I was trying to think of, other jobs in the Star Wars galaxy in a more serious light that, I wouldn't want. And, I think, being stationed at a place like the mining base, Polis Massa or whatever, what I'm talking about? Where she has the kids.
Yeah, Polis Massa. What did the Polis Massans do?
I don't know, but maybe they're miners or something. But it just seemed like a really lonely existence, kind of out there on these asteroids, and that didn't seem like a job that I really want to be out in the absolute middle of nowhere in space with nothing but asteroid walls, between you and death.
Now, full stop here. That is appealing to those of us who grew up in wide open spaces. Like, all right, you got to put on a suit, but there's nothing but space, no pun intended, around you. Yeah, space and quiet. Okay, sure. I mean, obviously they have electricity, and then with electricity, they got to have some form of entertainment. They probably can pick up, the holonet and stuff. So it's not such a bad life. Not such a bad life. You can go out. I mean, everybody loves to say that they like to go out to the country and see the stars. Yeah, me too. And you'll never not see the stars. Think about that.
This is true.
So,
I think of Solo as well because I also wouldn't want to be a grunt in the Imperial Army.
for
especially
Pete's
when they're
sake,
taking
no.
a plant like that.
I
thank you.
count that as stormtrooper. Like nobody, like who wants to be a stormtrooper?
I mean, I don't know. Some people, they love their cosplay. Sort of. You know who else I wouldn't want to be? Thinking of Solo, I wouldn't want to work for Voss. The guy, I mean, mainly because, one, I'm a dude. I don't think that I have the same charms that Kira might have on him to keep him from killing you.
Good point.
And, the way he gets angry and it's off with your head like the Queen of Hearts, I just feel like it's not a great way to do business. And I wouldn't want to work for somebody that volatile. I feel like at least Jabba, if you made him happy, he was cool, right? Like, he's all Han, my boogie, you could create a good relationship with a Hutt. With Dryden Voss, it doesn't seem like there's any real good relationships. It's all toxic power plays.
Well, listen, by the time Jabba hits Return of the Jedi, his menace is a little bit reduced in the fact that it's like you have to walk up and look for trouble the way Luke does. Right?
That's true, yeah.
Jabba's not out there looking for trouble at that point. It's like,
that's true.
And think about it. He's just chilling at home. It's constant party. He's just having a good time and everything.
Yeah.
And then these people walk in and they're like, whoa, we're going to mess you up. It's like, what, bro? What? I'm just sitting here. Dude owes me money. I got every right to hang him up, buy him out of there. Like, why didn't, that's a whole other different question.
It's
maybe
true.
I'll blog.
It's true.
Seriously, maybe I'll blog about it. Why didn't Luke offer something more than the 2 droids? Like, couldn't he have walked in and be like, I'll pay Han's debt times 2. Can we get him back, please? Right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Jabba's a businessman. He's going to listen to it. But you actually gave me a good idea that I think we need to return to is we need to do a deep dive episode on Dryden Voss, which we haven't done a deep dive just on him. And he's one of my favorite villains in the entire saga, if I'm honest with you. I love the way Paul Bettany plays with him. I'll always be interested to see how the other actor would have played him. But I love what Paul Bettany does. But something else that I love is telling people where to find you online so that they can give you their ideas for what the worst professions to have are in the Star Wars galaxy.
Well, if you want to find me, you could find me in my actual profession, which is running the bar at Vandor. There, I love being in the mountains. It's kind of like being in a ski lodge. This is my home. You can hit me up on social media at MattRushing02. You can also find me here on the network. I finished the show with Drea Kaufman called Owlpost, where we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series, one chapter at a time. Over on the TFM network, doing the 602 Club, where we talk about all the fandoms we love. It's a general geek show, so, we've got Star Wars and Marvel and DC and Bond and Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit and the list goes on. So if you love just talking about great genre movies, or shows, place to go. Of course, John was over there.
Yes.
In that same feed, we talked about every single thing that Zack Snyder has directed, and that was so much fun to be able to do. We've got a special show coming up there, coming up here in the fall. It's going to be starting there in October, and so that's going to be coming out. I think you're going to enjoy that, so look for that. And then do Literary Treks in the Orb over there. Literary Treks about the books and the comics of Star Trek, and the Orbs about Star Trek Deep Space Nine. But John, where can people find you?
Oh, nobody wants to find me, but if they feel like testing their luck, I'm at Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE, on your social network of choice. Letterboxd is a lot of fun. I watch a lot of movies, some of them very bad. And when I watch bad movies, I like to write funny reviews. So, connect with me over there. And you can find me right here on this network, co-hosting a show called House Lights, where we look at the work of directors, either from beginning to finish or broken out by themes or broken out by decades. We did a series on Coppola of the 1970s and left it there. We'll come back to him in the 1990s, and eventually we'll get around to the 80s, which weren't the best decade for Coppola. So, give or take. But, we're doing stuff from Spielberg to Nolan to Fincher. So, join us over there. But I'll tell you what, Matt, I've had a lot of fun talking about professions I wouldn't want in the Star Wars galaxy, but the profession I most wouldn't want is the person that has to clean up after me after the all-you-can-eat buffet back at the Jedi Temple. Speaking of which, it's time to go indulge, so I think it's time to close these negotiations.
John, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.